Imagine a world teetering on the edge of the familiar, a place where the fabric of the everyday begins to unravel, revealing glimpses of the extraordinary lurking beneath. You're about to embark on a journey into the enigmatic, where the peculiar and the perplexing intertwine, where every tale twists the mind and tugs at the spirit. It's a descent into the strange, the mysterious, and the unexplained. This is When Reality Frays. Welcome to the podcast. New episodes are published every Monday and Thursday, and When Reality Frays is available everywhere fine podcasts are found. Before we move on, please hit that follow or subscribe button and turn on all the reminders so you're alerted when new episodes are released. Thank you for listening. Now, let's get to the stories. Today's episode contains two stories. First up is The Departure, a tale of time lost and a war that might have been. And the second story of the day is the story of Carl Pruitt's grave, a cautionary tale that it's never a good idea to disturb the dead. The unassuming hum of a propeller plane slicing through the clear skies of 1954. A vessel of steel and ambition carrying 92 souls toward a horizon they'll never reach. Santiago Airlines Flight 513. A routine journey that leaves behind only a cold trail across the Atlantic. You're about to board a flight with no destination, in a place where reality frays. This story is called The Departure. September 4th, 1954. The morning sun glints off the polished aluminum skin of Santiago Airlines Flight 513 as it sits on the tarmac at Aachen-Meersbruck Airport, West Germany, waiting to depart for Porto Alegre, Brazil. It's a crisp Saturday, the air tinged with the sharp scent of aviation fuel and the optimism of the post-war boom. The Lockheed Super Constellation, a majestic beast with its dolphin-shaped fuselage and triple tail fins, hums with anticipation. Its four Wright Cyclone engines growl as mechanics give last-minute nods of approval. Inside, 88 passengers settled into their seats, a cross-section of 1950s life. German businessmen in crisp fedoras. Brazilian vacationers clutching leather suitcases. A young newlywed couple whispering excitedly about their honeymoon, and a gaggle of children darting down the aisle with paper airplanes. The crew, Captain Miguel Torres, a grizzled Spaniard with a reputation for precision, First Officer Hans Becker, a wiry German ex-Luftwaffe pilot, and stewardesses Ana Costa and Maria Lopez, both poised in starched uniforms, all moved with a rhythm of routine. At 10:17 a.m., the tower cleared takeoff. The props spun into a blur and the plane roared down the runway, lifting off into a sky so blue it seemed painted. Passengers peered out the oval windows as Aachen's patchwork of fields and rooftops shrank below. In the cockpit, Torres lit a cigarette, exhaling a plume that curled toward the ceiling vent. Becker adjusted his headset, joking about the headwinds over the Atlantic. The last radio contact came at 10:55 a.m. A crackling voice from Torres. Flight 513, all systems green, climbing to 20,000 feet. Then, silence. Air traffic controllers in Lisbon, expecting the plane for its first refueling stop, frowned as their radar screens blinked empty. No distress call, no static, just nothing. The search began within hours. The British and Portuguese Navy scoured the Atlantic, their ships carving through gray swells. Planes buzzed low, pilots squinting for oil slicks or wreckage. Nothing was found. Not a seat cushion, not a life vest, not a scrap of metal. Santiago Airlines, a scrappy outfit barely a decade old, scrambled to explain as theories swirled. A bomb planted by a Cold War saboteur? A freak storm missed by weather stations, perhaps a catastrophic engine failure. But the plane's maintenance logs were spotless. The weather was clear, and no group claimed responsibility. By Christmas 1954, the effort wound down. In Aachen, a small granite plaque went up, listing the names of the lost. The world moved on, the mystery calcifying into a footnote. 35 years later, October 12, 1989, Porto Alegre slept under a humid spring night, the city's skyline a modest glow against the horizon. At Salgado Filho International Airport, the graveyard shift in the control tower was winding down. Joa Silva, a veteran controller, yawned as he scanned his screens. At 3:42 a.m., a blip appeared. Unidentified, no transponder, moving fast from the northeast. He grabbed his binoculars as his trainee, Carla Mendez, radioed the craft. Multiple attempts only received static in return. 3 more calls, nothing. Silva's pulse quickened as the shape materialized on approach. A 4-engine prop plane, its silhouette achingly familiar. "That's a Constellation," he said. "My granddad flew those." The plane descended with ghostly grace, landing lights off, touching down like a whisper on runway 11. Its engines coughed to a stop, and the tower fell silent, all eyes on the relic now sitting under the sodium glow of the tarmac lights. Security trucks screeched up, their sirens slicing the stillness. Captain Roberto Lima, head of airport police, climbed out, barking orders. "Could be smugglers or worse," he growled, hand on his holster. The faded paint on the fuselage came into view. Santiago Airlines. "Get the hatch open," Lima ordered. The door creaked down and a stale breeze wafted out. Cigarette smoke, old leather, and something faintly metallic. Flashlights swept the cabin, revealing a time capsule. The seats were teal vinyl, cracked but intact. A Life magazine on a tray table bore Marilyn Monroe's face, dated September 4th, 1954. A half-smoked Lucky Strike sat in an ashtray, its ember long dead. A child's drawing, a red crayon airplane, soared across a napkin. Then the lights found the passengers and the team froze. Skeletons, 92 of them, strapped in, upright, jaws slack. A businessman's skull tilted against the window, his tie still knotted. A woman's bony fingers clutched a rosary, her hat perched jauntily atop her cranium. In the galley, Anna Costa's skeleton stood mid-stride, a tray of ossified sandwiches balanced in her grasp. A young officer, Paulo, approached Lima holding out a ticket he had taken from the shirt pocket of one of the corpses. "Flight 513, Lima read. "That's a ghost story, boss," Paulo whispered. "My tia used to scare me with it." Lima shot him a look. "Don't be spreading rumors," Lima snapped. Lima went to the cockpit. Captain Torres' skeletal hands gripped the yoke, his logbook open. September 4th, 1954, 10:55 a.m. All systems normal. Weather clear. ETA Lisbon, 14:30. Becker's skull rested on the co-pilot's panel, his headset dangling. The instruments glowed faintly, needles twitching as if alive. Lima radioed for backup, his voice shaking. "We've got a situation. Bring the army." By dawn, the tarmac swarmed with military police, forensic teams, and a handful of stunned journalists who had caught wind of the landing. The plane's fuel tanks held pristine kerosene, enough for a transatlantic hop, not a 35-year odyssey. The engines fired up on command, purring like they'd just rolled off the assembly line. Food in the galley, ham sandwiches, apples, a chocolate cake, was petrified, shrink-wrapped in time. A physicist from the University of Sao Paulo, Dr. Elena Campos, arrived with a Geiger counter. It ticked faintly near the cockpit, hinting at low-level radiation, but nothing of concern. The skeletons were cataloged. No fractures, no burns, just decades of decay. Dental records and jewelry matched missing persons files from 1954. Carl Weber's gold molar, Sophia Almeida's tiny bracelet. Yet the plane's clock, still ticking, read 11:23 a.m. September 4th, 1954. More theories erupted. Campos posited a time dilation event, a relativistic glitch where hours inside the plane stretched into decades outside. A grizzled ex-pilot swore it was a Bermuda Triangle offshoot, despite the geography. Skeptics cried hoax, but the plane's serial number matched Lockheed's records, and metallurgists confirmed its rivets predated modern alloys. The Brazilian government, spooked by the implications, locked it down. The plane was towed to a hangar at Canoas Air Base, sealed behind razor wire. The official statement? Mechanical anomaly, investigation ongoing. Files vanished into classified vaults. But still, rumors festered. A janitor, sweeping the tarmac that night, told a bar full of drunks he'd seen a man step off the plane before the cops closed in. Gray suit, briefcase, looked like my old man in his Sunday best, he slurred. Muttering in German, wandered off toward the road. Security logs confirmed a gap of more than 5 minutes between landing and the arrival of Lima and his officers. Then, in 1992, a Brazilian tabloid with a taste for the weird dropped a bombshell, a grainy photo smuggled from the investigation. The plane loomed on the runway, officials in hazmat suits milling about. In the foreground, half blurred, a man in a 1950 suit strode away, his back to the camera, briefcase swinging in his hand. The story snowballed. A waitress at a diner near the airport claimed a man in funny old clothes paid for coffee with crisp 1954 Deutschmarks 2 days after the plane landed. Kept asking about the war. Is it over? Did we win? She said. Thought he was talking about World War II, but when I answered him, he said, not that one, and left. A taxi driver, Luis Ferreira, told police he had picked up a fare matching the description of the man outside the terminal that night. Spoke perfect German, old-fashioned like in war movies. Asked for the São Rafael Hotel, but it burned down in '67. He was surprised, but had me drop him at the lot where it used to be. He tipped me a coin, big silver thing, 1954 mark, and then walked away into the dark. No luggage, just a briefcase. The final twist came in 1995. A pawn shop owner in Porto Alegre contacted authorities, claiming a man had sold him a strange item in 1989, a Santiago Airlines pilot's wings pin, engraved M. Torres. The seller, he said, was pale, twitchy, maybe 50, with a thick German accent. Kept saying he had to get back. They're waiting. Police traced the pin. It matched Captain Torres' personnel file. A retired detective digging into the case years later found a faded report from a rural police station 200 miles to the north of Porto Alegre. A farmer, in November of 1989, had spotted a man in a tattered suit wandering his fields, clutching a briefcase. Kept yelling, "Why didn't they drop it?" the farmer said. Thought he was drunk. That was the last time the mysterious man from Flight 513 was seen. During the 1950s, the United States and the Soviet Union competed in an ever-escalating nuclear arms race. Both sides developed thermonuclear weapons which were magnitudes more powerful than the uranium bombs used against Japan during World War II. And both sides were greatly assisted by former Nazi scientists. Very shortly after the disappearance of Flight 513, the Soviet Union tested their first hydrogen bomb, airdropped by a Tupolev bomber. To this day, rumors persist that a rogue faction of Soviet generals attempted to redirect the bomber and drop that warhead on Washington, D.C. At the time, mid-1950s, it is entirely plausible that a single Soviet bomber could have penetrated U.S. air defenses and carried out an attack that would have triggered the end of the world. The survivor of Flight 513, if he was real, has evaporated into myth. Was he possibly one of the Nazi scientists working for the Soviet Union, fleeing Europe ahead of an anticipated Soviet nuclear strike on America? Or was 513's vanishing and reappearance part of a higher intelligence, perhaps saving all of humanity from a thermonuclear war? We'll likely never know the truth of Flight 513, forever out of reach in that place where reality frays. Our second story today is The Curse of Carl Pruitt's Grave. A quiet corner of Pulaski County, Kentucky, a place where the hills cradle secrets and the earth hums with a memory too stubborn to fade. Here, a man named Carl Pruitt crossed a line no man was meant to cross, a single act of rage that unraveled his life and stitched a shadow into the fabric of this town. It begins with a chain, a simple tool turned instrument of wrath, and ends with a grave that refuses to rest. A marker not just of one man's end, but of something darker, something that clings to the soil like a stain the rain can't wash away. Now, you're invited to walk the fringes of Somerset, where the ordinary meets the inexplicable, where the dead reach out with cold, unyielding hands to settle scores the living can't comprehend. A place where reality frays. This is the story of the curse of Carl Pruitt's grave. In the summer of 1938, Pulaski County lay under a haze of heat and hardship. Nestled in Kentucky's Cumberland Plateau, its rolling hills were dotted with tobacco fields, clapboard homes, and weathered barns. The Great Depression had carved deep lines into the faces of its people, farmers, laborers, and shopkeepers who clung to faith and routine in Somerset, the county seat. The air smelled of dust and honeysuckle, and cicadas hummed through long, sticky days. It was a place where life moved slow, where secrets simmered beneath the surface, and where the dead were expected to stay buried. Hillcrest Cemetery sat on the town's eastern edge, a half-acre of uneven ground bordered by a sagging iron fence and choked with crabgrass. Its older stones dated back to the Civil War, moss-eaten and tilting, while newer graves bore the names of families still known in Somerset. It was a quiet place, rarely visited save for Sunday mourners, until Carl Pruitt's arrival turned it into a crucible of fear. Carl Pruitt was no stranger to Somerset's whispers. Born in 1900 to a struggling tenant farmer, he grew up tall and wiry with dark eyes that rarely met others' gaze. By 1938, he was a skilled carpenter, crafting furniture for local homes, though his temper was as sharp as his tools. He had married Margaret Ellis in 1925, a soft-spoken woman with a knack for sewing, and they settled in a modest house off Highway 80. Their union was childless, and neighbors noted the chill between them. Margaret's smile faded over the years, and Carl's silences grew heavier. Rumors swirled that Margaret sought comfort elsewhere, a betrayal Carl suspected but never voiced. On June 15, 1938, suspicion became certainty. Returning early from a job in Burnside, he found her in their bedroom with James Anderson, a local mechanic known for his charm. The scene snapped something in Carl. He stormed to the shed, grabbed a logging chain, its links rusted but heavy, and returned to unleash his fury. Margaret fought, clawing at his arms, but the chain tightened around her throat, her gasps fading to stillness. Anderson bolted, bloodied from a glancing blow, leaving Carl alone with his wife's lifeless body. Staring at her, Carl's rage gave way to despair. He dragged the chain to the barn, looped it over a beam, and hanged himself, his boots dangling inches above the hay-strewn floor. A neighbor, alerted by Anderson's frantic escape, found them at dusk. Margaret sprawled across the bed, Carl swaying in the dim light, his neck bruised purple. The discovery rocked Somerset, a town unaccustomed to such brutality. Margaret's funeral was a somber affair held at the Baptist church with a full pew of mourners. Carl's was different. Shunned as a murderer and suicide, sins unforgivable in the eyes of many, he was denied a church service. On June 18th, a handful of relatives buried him in Hillcrest Cemetery, far from the consecrated plots, in a corner shadowed by a gnarled oak. His headstone, a plain slab of limestone, bore only his name and dates: Carl Pruitt, 1900 to 1938. The gravediggers worked quickly, muttering prayers under their breath, eager to be done. Within days, unease settled over the cemetery. A groundskeeper, Old Man Tate, swore the soil over Carl's grave stayed loose, refusing to settle like the others. A week later, a stray dog was found dead near the stone, its throat mangled as if crushed. No one spoke of a curse, yet, but the air around Hillcrest felt thicker, the cicada's hum muted near Pruitt's plot. The first death. Billy Harper was 15, a freckled boy with a mop of red hair and a restless spirit. On July 2, 1938, he rode his bicycle past Hillcrest with two friends, Tommy Gaines and Eddie Rice, their laughter cutting through the afternoon heat. The Pruitt story had already spread. Kids dared each other to peek at the grave while adults warned them to stay away. Billy, bold and skeptical, scoffed at the tales. Picking up a rock, he hurled it at Carl's marker, the stone chipping the edge with a sharp crack. His friends cheered, then pedaled off, leaving Billy to catch up. That evening, as he cycled home along a dirt lane near his family's farm, disaster struck. His bicycle chain, worn but functional, snapped in mid-ride, whipping upward with unnatural speed. It coiled around his neck, yanking him off the seat. He crashed into a ditch, the chain tightening as if pulled by unseen hands. His mother, Elsie, found him at dusk, his face blue, eyes bulging, the metal links embedded deep in his flesh. She screamed, clawing at the chain, and later swore she heard a low guttural laugh fade into the wind. The coroner, Dr. Amos Hale, called it a freak accident, though he couldn't explain the chain's force, strong enough to fracture Billy's windpipe. The Pulaski County Journal ran a brief notice on July 6th, "Boy dies in bicycle mishap," omitting the cemetery link. But Elsie told anyone who would listen that it was Pruitt that took her boy. The second death. John Metcalf, a 42-year-old farmer with a weathered face and a limp from a childhood fall, was the next to cross Carl's path. On August 12th, he visited Hillcrest to weed his wife's grave, a ritual he kept since her death from pneumonia in 1936. A practical man, he dismissed the growing whispers about Pruitt as foolish talk. Passing Carl's headstone, he noticed the missing chunk from Billy's thrown rock and kicked the marker hard, the toe of his boot scuffing the surface. "Rest in hell," he muttered as he continued on his way. That afternoon, John was hauling field stones in his wagon to mend a fence near his barn. The load was light, the mules steady, yet as he crossed a shallow rise, the wagon tipped violently as if shoved. A boulder rolled free, pinning him to the ground with a sickening crunch. His hired hand found him hours later. The stone had crushed his chest, and blood was pooled beneath his body. The hand swore the wagon's axle was intact and the ground level. No reason for the spill. John's eyes stared skyward, his last breath stolen. The Pulaski County Journal reported it on August 18th as "Farmer Killed in Freak Accident," noting his earlier cemetery visit only in passing. Reverend Amos Tate preached the next Sunday on vengeance from beyond, pointing to Carl's grave as a warning. The chipped stone now bore a faint crack, as if John's kick had woken something deeper. The third death. Clara Evans, a 29-year-old seamstress with a gentle smile, became the third victim on September 10th. She had gone to Hillcrest with her sister, Ruth, to lay daisies on their mother's grave. Clara, curious about the Pruitt tale, paused at his headstone, tracing the chipped edge with her finger. "Poor soul," she said softly, feeling a chill despite the warm day. Ruth tugged her away, uneasy. That night, Clara woke sweating, gasping about a man with a chain standing at her bedside. Ruth dismissed it as a nightmare, but the next evening, as Clara ironed a dress in her kitchen, the curse struck. Her heavy iron, resting securely on its stand on a shelf above, toppled without cause, striking her temple. The cord looped around her neck, tightening as she fell. Ruth found her an hour later, the iron cold, the cord knotted impossibly tight. Dr. Hale ruled it accidental, but the bruise on Clara's head and the cord's grip defied logic. Ruth told the tale at the general store, setting the town abuzz. The cemetery was now a place to avoid. The fourth death. Henry Grayson, a 55-year-old widower and Hillcrest's part-time groundskeeper, met his end on September 24th. A gruff man with a limp and a taste for bourbon, he had tended the cemetery for years, scoffing at the idea of curses. Tasked with clearing weeds, he brushed Carl's headstone with his rake, muttering about damn kids and their stories. The touch was fleeting, but enough. That night, a storm rolled in, rare for late September, its clouds black and roiling. Henry was crossing his field, rake in hand, when lightning struck with pinpoint precision. The bolt charred him instantly, fusing the rake's metal to his palm, his body smoldering in the rain. Neighbors saw the flash from miles away, centered over Hillcrest, yet no other strikes hit Somerset. The Pulaski County Journal called it a tragic lightning death on September 28th, noting the cemetery link, but not the pattern. Henry's death electrified the rumors, literally and figuratively. Some saw it as Carl wielding nature itself, a wrath beyond chains. The fifth death. Eddie Thompson, a 19-year-old mechanic's apprentice with a passion for photography, was the final victim on October 15th. Intrigued by the curse, he sneaked into Hillcrest at dusk with his Kodak camera, aiming to capture proof. He snapped a single shot of Pruitt's headstone, the flash piercing the twilight, then hurried home to develop it. In his makeshift darkroom, a shed behind his father's garage, he watched the image emerge. A blurred shadow loomed over the stone, too tall and too dark to be a trick of light. As the print dried, Eddie's scream cut the night. His father burst in, finding him slumped, a length of chain from his workbench coiled around his throat, his hands clawing at it. The photo lay beside him, the shadow stark against the chipped stone. Dr. Hale pronounced him dead, strangulation, no assailant present. The Pulaski County Journal ran "Youth Found Dead in Shed" on October 20th, hinting at the curse, but stopping short of belief. Eddie's death sealed the legend. 5 lives, all tied to Carl's grave, all ended in ways too strange to dismiss. Somerset reeled. Hillcrest became a no-man's land. Families refused to bury kin there. Children dared each other to approach, but never lingered. The town council met on October 25th, debating whether to exhume Carl and rebury him elsewhere. A plan to move the grave stalled. Funds were short, and no one volunteered to dig. The cemetery's iron gate rusted shut, its paths overtaken by briars. Carl's headstone, chipped and cracked, stood alone, a silent sentinel. The Pulaski County Journal published Mystery Deaths Plagued Cemetery, listing the 5 incidents with cautious skepticism, but the town needed no convincing. Elsie Harper moved away, unable to face the ditch where Billy died. Ruth Evans took to wearing a cross, swearing she had never returned to Hillcrest. The hand who worked for John Metcalf quit farming, haunted by the wagon's impossible tilt. Eddie's father burned the photograph, refusing to speak of it. Dr. Hale, the coroner, retired in 1940, admitting privately to friends that the deaths felt wrong, too neat and too cruel. By 1939, the killings had stopped, though the fear didn't. Hillcrest faded into disuse, its graves untended, Pruitt's plot, a patch of bare earth after vandals, or something else, toppled his stone in the 1940s. The curse of Carl Pruitt's grave remains a dark enigma, a man's rage turned eternal, a cemetery turned trap. Hillcrest is gone now, swallowed by time and neglect, its location lost to modern maps. Yet in Pulaski County, the story endures, whispered over porch swings and campfires. Disturb the dead, and they'll claim you, when reality frays. The stories presented are inspired by true events. Names may have been changed for privacy reasons. New episodes are uploaded every Monday and Thursday. If you're enjoying the journey into the strange, the mysterious, and the unexplained, be sure to press that follow or subscribe button and turn on all notifications so you're alerted whenever an episode drops.